Does God care about the environment? Today on Where We Begin. Welcome back to Where We Begin, a podcast that answers some of the toughest objections to Christianity today. Did that sound right?
It sounded fine.
Did I say that sentence correctly?
There is no
Derek.
way to say
You don't need to
did
redo
great.
it. We're here. You introduced us. It's great.
Okay, yeah, I'm Derek.
I'm Lou.
You know.
Alicia.
Hi, I'm Xandra.
Oh, that was way better. Much less for me to remember.
Yes,
Yep.
much less.
I have to relearn your names every week.
I know.
And so today we are talking about the environment.
Yay.
Yay! Everybody likes the environment.
I do.
Recently,
Lou
Lou does not. Apparently.
Whatever. Yes. I mean,
Lou
gosh.
is
Lou does not
indifferent.
recycle.
Yes, I do.
He dumps tires into the dirt.
No,
Undesired.
that's
Yeah.
not. Oh my gosh, these people are gonna not know.
I've actually seen Lou putting those plastic things that are around aluminum cans over a duck's. But
Forcing the
yeah, it's like he doesn't. It's not
head
even.
into it.
It's not even an accident.
Stop.
He's out
The
there
six-pack
catching sea
plastic
turtles
thing.
and putting straws
Okay.
up their nostrils.
Yeah. He
Thank
is, in a word,
Gosh.
2 words, the worst.
The worst.
And I think we can all agree on that. But the interesting thing is recently I sent Xandra a video, a TED Talk, and I didn't know this was going to come up. I didn't.
Oh, I know what you're trying. That was a great video.
Yeah, it was an interesting video because essentially this gentleman, his name is Michael Schellenberger, and he's saying, hey, there's a problem with the world, climate change. And it's so difficult to talk about this with Christians sometimes because it's such a loaded question, but let's just assume it exists for the sake of argument. And he's saying that essentially all of our fixes so far for climate change lead to just more problems. Wind farms, not great. Huge, sort of a huge ecological cost to that.
Birds and stuff.
Which one did I say? Wind?
Wind.
Yeah.
Solar farm, same thing. Like it takes up all this land. He's actually pushing for nuclear, being that it's kind of gotten a bad rap, but it's actually the most efficient, the cheapest, the safest, the most renewable of all of these resources. But I think one of the things I took away from that is essentially that there is the moral of the story is that sort of creation is in trouble. It needs fixed. Most of our fixes hurt it. Nothing actually fixes it.
Yeah.
So what do we do? And it would be easy to step back and ask, well, if it's in this kind of a state, does God even, if we get into the theological, does God care about the environment? Again, it seems like he's just sort of left it alone to us and we can't figure out how to fix it. So there's going to be I think there are a few reasons why people might question that. Some religious groups don't have the best track record with caring about the environment. But first, Xandra, I wonder if you could ask, we don't usually do this on Where We Begin. This will be a first. We're going to answer the question at the beginning of the show.
Oh.
And then flesh it out a bit later. Does God care about the environment?
Yes.
Yeah. What would you say? Yes.
I would say he does.
You think he does?
100%. Hundo P, as
Prove
the
it.
kids would say. I've got lots of line of evidences to prove it.
Okay.
So the Bible's one.
Okay.
Fairly good evidence.
So in Genesis, God calls his creation good long before we're ever on the scene, long before we're ever there to have dominion over it. And we can talk more about the dominion piece as well, because I think that's an important part of the conversation. And then you can look all the way through to Revelation, where he creates a new heaven and a new earth. And you see that he has taken the care and the intentionality of bringing all of his creation back to what it was meant to be. And you see harmony. all signs of predation are gone. You see, ravenous beasts who are eating straw like an ox. You see a little child who can play with an adder and it doesn't bite him. A lamb lies down with a wolf. It's not a lion, as Lou taught me. It's actually a wolf. So all of these things I think are pointing towards, and some of those passages aren't in Revelation, but they are in apocalyptic literature throughout the scriptures. So yeah, I think that points to the idea that God cares about his creation. And ultimately, why wouldn't he? Because it belongs to him. I mean, as Psalm 18 says, that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So we like to think that it all belongs to us and we get to do whatever we want with it. But actually, we're stewards of something very precious and very beautiful that belongs to him. And ultimately, it's not ours. So yes, I think he cares for it very much so. And I think I would just love to know what he thinks about the current state of things.
Well, yeah, so that's, and again, try to avoid the political as much as we can, but there is this sense in which you do seem to hear a lot of Christians, and I think this is the criticism from non-Christians, you seem to hear them say that there's no way that any of the problems we have could really be man-made. That's almost a hubris to think we would have that sort of control over God's creation, that sovereignty to affect it like that. But it seems to me throughout the scriptures, we are shown instances of we have sort of, we are stewards, and we have this sort of almost this priestly relationship to the creation and the ability to harm it. I mean, our fall sort of, there's the question of thorns after the fall, and there's some debate on what that would possibly be. But there's also, on the Day of Atonement, there's this idea that you had to purify actually the land of the sin that had infected it. So there is some relationship there between them. And so how do we make sense of that theologically? That's, as much as we can, forget, sort of political allegiances and what is the impact a human can actually have on creation? From my reading, it seems a big one. But maybe I'm wrong about that.
I don't. So I would say I grew up in a family that was quite God made this earth, we can't do it. It's kind of your argument. But that was actually never backed up with scripture. It was just kind of like a talking point. And I don't blame my parents for it. I mean, should they have done more research? Sure. But they weren't trying to be anti-anything. They're just no, God gave us this earth. He's not going to flood the earth again. He said that in Genesis, so we're fine. This is an overreaction by people who are worshiping the creation. It's kind of like what I was told. And it is funny because when you think of an environmentalist, who here thinks of a Christian? No one. We immediately go to somebody that doesn't. Maybe Xander doesn't because she's actually in this realm far more. But the one scripture that kind of just shook me was in Genesis when it actually is talking about, it got so bad at one point that God says, I'm going to kind of restart this thing, essentially. It's this is so, and this is what he says in Genesis, after the flood. It says, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you. For all future generations, I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And it also says, I will never again curse the ground because of man. So the idea that we don't have some effect on the earth that we're in, to me, is just I don't think there is an argument out of scripture from scripture that say we don't have an effect. I should say there's multiple examples of evidence that says we do. So I don't know where that started. But as someone whose views had to change, it was definitely a little jarring initially because no one ever told me that one. I was actually told by Christians that this is not an issue for us. And I was like, yeah, I think it's a sad dropping of the ball. I don't know where I was taking that. I'm sorry.
It's good.
I think I was just saying, I would say from scripture, yes, that we have, I think, many points to say that we have an effect on this earth, and that matters. Our friend Nathan Rittenhouse, I think he's the one that said, in the end, Christ says, I come to make all things new, not I come to make new things. Which is interesting. I mean, and the fact that we know that there's going to be a new creation, because that was also the argument. God's going to make a new one anyway. Why do we care?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Which has massive implications on why we do anything in life, right?
Evangelism,
It's like just a very bad theological view of the earth, like that if you applied to any other area of your life, it wouldn't make sense within Christianity. It's things like that. No, the earth matters because in the end, he's actually going to create a new one. The thing that we love here matters.
He's going to give us new bodies. So why do we
exactly.
Right,
like,
why care
it doesn't
about
matter.
this
We get a new body, so I might as well not take care of this. It's like, that's not good theology. That's not what we're asked to do.
Yeah. And I think I would.
Sorry, let the train pass.
Yeah, what is that?
I have no idea.
Is there an animal in the vent? Well, anyway.
Hopefully the microphones don't pick it up.
No, it definitely is.
Okay.
Yeah,
You can hear that? What is that?
something must be in there.
I think it's the air forcing.
Something came loose.
No, I think
something exactly. I don't think it's an
came
animal.
loose.
All right, there we are. We're done.
Little raccoon up there with a set of drums.
Yeah, so I think I really struggle with a lot of the Christian attitude towards this, and I don't know the full reasons as to why Christians have kind of this "who cares about the environment" kind of issue or attitude, and I don't know if maybe it's because people who care about the environment tend to be quote unquote liberal or more progressive, and maybe some Christians are saying, well, I don't want anything to do with that side, as if the two sides don't agree on a lot of things. We focus on the things we disagree on and then say we hate each other. But so I don't know if that's the reason. I like what Lou said, because that's what I've heard too, is that, well, God's just gonna make a new one, so it doesn't matter. And obviously that's faulty. I really struggle because if we believe in God as a creator, then what creator doesn't care about their creation? Yeah. What artist doesn't care about the painting they just painted? What car mechanic doesn't care about the car that they just helped put back together? What chef does not take pride in the meal that they've made? The connection between the author of something and I guess you could say the outworking of the author is always there. There's always this connection. So you're not going to convince me that God doesn't care about his creation. Now, an author may care about the book they produce, but they may not care about the book more than they care about their child. Right? So you could say God cares about creation, but it doesn't mean he cares about creation more than he cares about humans. I think that's fair to say. I think that there is something unique about humans that puts in a different value category than a tree per se. But I can't be convinced that God doesn't care at all. And if God cares about it, then I should care about it. And I think too, part of our struggle with this is we've moved from an agricultural society to kind of we go to the store and we buy our food. And in times past, you grew your vegetables, your fruit, you ate from the land. You had this connection with the environment and with the natural world. And when we lose that, as we've moved to cities or just other places where that isn't as popular or as feasible, even because you don't have the land, you then no longer value it because it's no longer a significant part of your life. It's no longer something that brings you nutrition. Our nutrition, God has created this natural world to feed us as well. In other words, we get our nutrition from it. I love when we learn about this new fruit that's loaded in antioxidants and all these things that helps clear this toxin out of your body, or these things God has given us these things, and our connection with them is there because they help bring so much nutrition and value to us. And so I just think it's been easy for us to just say, well, nature is something I see on TV. It's not something that actually brings me the connection that I had before, because we've left this idea of farming or even just growing a few things. So I think some of that has made it easier for us to have this negative attitude towards the environment and towards the natural world. And I think also too, we recognize that it is a losing battle. I'm really excited about the idea of electric cars coming out. But then Xander sends me a video about how electric car, I haven't read it, I haven't watched it because I'm scared too, because I don't want to be disappointed, because I was so excited for electric cars, no more pollution in the air, only to find out, well, maybe they're still causing problems in the environment in some way. And I'm like, no. So it does make you feel like you're never going to win. It's a dying cause. And I think that I get that, but my body's a dying cause. I'm not going to live eternally but I still care for it in the now. And so I just feel like, is there a way that we can care for it in the now? Although we know the end is coming, but can I care for something that the Creator cares for as well? And to me, that's why I love the environment. I care about it fully. Plus Job being one of my favorite books in the Bible. It's all about nature. And that won me over years ago. So yeah, I struggle with kind of the Christian attitude towards it.
What is it in Job that you specifically?
Well, since you asked, no, I just love that the big question of suffering that we ask for philosophers and theologians and everybody of every religion and no religion asks this question of suffering, that God responds to suffering by talking about himself as a creator. Like that blows my mind. And in chapter 38 through 41, God finally speaks and he talks about things like, where were you, Job, when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know who stretched the line upon it, to what its foundations fastened, or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth, when I made the clouds its garment, and these kind of things. Like when I fixed my limit for the seas, essentially, and I said, this far you will come, but no further. And he goes on to talk about the constellations, and he goes on to talk about how, are you there when the animals give birth? Like God addresses the suffering question by talking about himself as a creator who is not limited in his power. And if we can, and we are witnesses of his power through the natural world around us. Doesn't mean he's in the tree. Doesn't mean he's in the ocean. I'm not saying in pantheistic kind of a view, but we can have witnesses of who he is through the natural around us, which can help us get through the things that we're dealing with in life. It's like, that's why when people just want to sit out and watch a sunset and they feel the sense of peace, right? We have the sense of awe connecting us that nature kind of can kind of like, I don't know, like it just kind of impacts us. It's not like we just sit there and say, that's cute. And plus then we have the whole, general revelation thing. Alexandra could go on about this one for a long time too. God using general revelation to reveal himself. I mean, he's using nature to reveal himself. There's so many things, but that's why I love Job, is that God shows up and Job's response after suffering for so long, Job's response to what God says is, before my ears heard of you, but now my eyes see you. They see you through your creation. I got you, God. I know who you are. I remember who you are. Like to me, that just made me, when I read that at 18, 19 years old, that instantly changed the way I viewed creation.
There is something about the beauty of, I think, the artistry of creation that does, I don't know, sort of evokes something that it will give you hope. It is that thing that's, okay, there's got to be someone out there.
Yep.
And I know, Xander, I don't know if you want to talk, you're working on a project, correct? That is very much about the beauty of creation and what that tells us about God.
I am. I'm trying to think of which project you're talking about. Oh, you're talking about the Museum of Beauty project. Yeah. I'm working on another project that's tracing the changes of the Christian view of nature through like the Byzantine period and the medieval period. And it's looking through the lens of literature and art from those periods, because that can help us understand how it's changed. But yeah, so the Museum of Beauty is a different project. And it's a twofold thing. So E.O. Wilson always said that the way that we could save the earth basically is to just teach people to love nature again. He called it biophilia. Oh, wow. And so that's why I have my Awesome Animal of the Week post.
Which is so cool.
In part is just look at this beautiful thing that was just discovered and
where
just
can people
reawakening.
Find that?
What's that?
Oh, sorry. I want to make sure people know where to find that.
Oh yeah. Maybe we can put it in the link. Yeah. But yeah, I think that when we reawaken that love of nature, and again, it's not a worship of nature, but it's a love of nature, because we are made in God's image and we're meant to love the things that he loves. And he loves what he's created. Like Alicia said, what creator doesn't love what they've created? Honestly. So it's valuable to him, it matters to him, and it should matter to us too. So the Museum of Beauty project is, it's a digital museum. It's going to be a series of 100 rooms, ranging from the macrocosm to the microcosm. So we're starting with, the Lacanea supergroup, and then like our galactic cluster, and then you get down to, you know, systems. We've got the Andromeda and our own, you know, galaxies and whatever else, and then down, and then you get really tiny down to like diatoms, and like itty bitty, and everything in between. So it's just really a way to reawaken people's imagination and sense of wonder, because the sense of wonder is a really special, powerful thing. And like Alicia said, you know, God speaks to us about wonder through nature, and that does something to us spiritually. I'm just trying to be aware of the time, because I know I can go on and on about the environment and like how important it is for us to love it and cherish it and care for it and steward it well. But there are many conservationists who are Christian, actually, Lou. Yeah. Actually, the father of my particular field, which is called reconciliation ecology, he believes in God, and he believes in this idea of stewardship. That's what God meant when he said dominion. Yeah. And that perspective brings so much to the conversation that other viewpoints don't. Because in other viewpoints, you know, if you watch any, like I was just watching recently, did you know Obama made a nature documentary? Yes. He narrates it. Yes. It's awesome. I'm like, I'm loving this, because I'm just picturing him like walking around and talking while he's, I don't know, it's great. But what you hear in almost every one of those episodes is we have to do this to save ourselves. We have to save the earth to save ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so there's either fear or guilt. Those are the two, like self-preservation or shame for what we've done in the past. And not to say that either of those are necessarily bad, but Christianity offers something that other people can't, which is love. Yeah. The motivation of love, that we love what Christ has made, and we want to care for it because we love it. And again, that goes back to E.O. Wilson's idea of biophilia. Yeah.
I actually love that you brought that up, because one of the things I found fascinating is like, well, if you know this story, I mean, I remember learning about Lynn White and the anthropocentrism, and how Christianity is inherently anthropocentric, meaning it's man-focused and that we are the center of it all. And that's why the world is, that's why the environment is so damaged, is because we believe we have dominion kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yet the arguments currently, and I remember listening even to Greta speak about, and then to your point of what Obama's saying, it's still anthropocentric. It's about us. It's like, do this, otherwise we don't live in the future. And I actually think the best argument for, like, the best worldview to save this planet is actually the Christian worldview, because essentially what's going on is we are very consumeristic. The more advanced we become, the more consumeristic we get. And what does consumerism produce? It produces convenience and comfort. No other worldview say deny yourself and not actually push for everything to go your way like Christianity. And so if there is going to be a level of like, you actually need to sacrifice aspects of your freedom, aspects of your comforts, the things you want, that's what it means to be a Christian. And so if you actually want a worldview to help undermine, or I guess to help save this world, I don't know how we want to describe it, or like prevent some of the problems that we're seeing, I think the Christian worldview offers us the best one more than anything else. Because if it's just a naturalist approach, it really is just save it. But they also believe it's going to burn up anyway. That's right? True. I mean, truly, like the purely naturalist view is like,
there's
eventually
no
this is going to burn.
Either nature's rights or our responsibility for nature. In that view, there's zero.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a good point, Lou.
But I feel like we really do have something to offer, because it does need to come from a place of love. Why do we deny ourselves? Ultimately because of his love for us. Like, why would I give up my comforts? Why would I not want to just buy something and not care where it came from? Because ultimately it doesn't affect me. Right. Well, because it affects others and it affects the world that I'm in. No other worldview tells you to think about that quite as deeply than Christianity.
It's true. And it's such a great open door for us as Christians, taking all of those things into account to say, we are living in, and I'm not trying to get political here, I'm just making a statement. This country, the United States of America, is the most wasteful country on the face of the planet. That's just an uncontested fact. Mm-hmm. And we have such an opportunity as Christians to be salt and light and live differently in this world where people just say, oh, everything's convenient. We're gonna use whatever materials we can. We're gonna ship all of our toxic, hazardous waste to other countries and let them deal with it and let their children breathe it in. I mean, James 4 has some serious things to say about that, about an affluent people group who send their stuff away or manipulate or use someone else to try and get out of, and ultimately all of that wealth just ends up corroding and corrupting. But we have an opportunity to be salt in a culture that's corrupting and corroding because of our wastefulness and our greed. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Lynn White, because Alistair McGrath comments on that paper, which I read again recently. It's called The Cause of Our Ecological Crisis. And McGrath says that Lynn White is completely right when he says that anthropocentrism is the reason for our ecological crisis, but completely wrong when he says Christianity is the root of that.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. We're the ones who are meant to be serving and putting others before ourselves, taking care of other people, taking care of the environment. And Proverbs says it well. It says that even the righteous man will take good care of his animal, but even the kindness of the wicked man is cruel. And so I think we need to be sober-minded as believers about how we are approaching the natural world and ignore the political side of it. This is between us and God. We will be held accountable for our actions and for what we do.
Yeah.
I know both of you are actually extremely good about, like, I think Alicia will use a Walmart bag and that'll be her trash for 4 weeks. I don't know how she does. It's impressive.
One grocery bag.
Yeah, it's
woman,
really
she'll
impressive.
put her trash in there for 2 weeks.
And I actually aspire, I'm trying to find ways, but I know as somebody that has had to really shift my entire view on this, Xandra, I would love to hear from you as I don't know if whatever this sounds, why not? Sorry, I'm not completing my sentences. I'm sorry, Derek. I'm just going to ask her to maybe
Yeah, it's really hard
something.
to edit the transcripts because of this.
I know, sorry. Xandra, I'd love to know, because it can feel so overwhelming, because I think a lot of Christians actually do want to do something, but honestly, what you're told to do is just completely, it's almost an unlivable way of going about things. What are some small things that just your average American Christian and those listening all across the world, what are some things that we can actually do? Small things, just taking steps to be more conscious of the way we're actually affecting the world.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of ideas that are more government level, but I'll just keep it to a household level, maybe. Yeah. I think really the number one problem right now at this current time in our current context is waste.
Yeah.
Waste is the number one problem. So when each of us die, I know this is morbid, when each of us die, we're going to be put in one grave worth of plot, right? But we're going to leave behind 1,100 grave plots worth of rubbish that will never go away. It's never going to decompose. And that's for each and every one of us. And there's no reason for us to be throwing away plastic at the rate that we are. Now, I don't think we should just stop making plastic. Some people would say that, and I don't think think of how plastic has helped us.
Right.
Think of the medical field for crying out loud.
Right.
But certain things even just going back to the reduce, reuse, recycle, it was in that order, in that way. So I would say for you and your household, remember that if you have to use something, okay, but just use less of it. Reduce. And then let's take Alicia's bag, for example. Okay, so Alicia gets a grocery bag from the grocery store. She could try to reduce having to get that bag by bringing a cloth bag.
Which I do.
Which she does. But maybe she forgets, so she ends up having to get a plastic bag when she runs by the store, and that's okay. But she's at least going to reuse that bag as much as she can. And after she's, she'll reuse it to carry, something to her friend or carry books to work or whatever. And then when she's done with that, she can recycle that in the receptacle at the grocery store. So you reduce first, and then you reuse second, and the very last resort is recycle. Recycling is not really a solution. It should be the very last step. So honestly, yeah, and I know we don't like to think about being less wasteful, but it's just staggering to think about what you can see from space. I mean, it's just insane that we're creating rubbish at the rate that we are. So I would say really try to cut down on that. That's one tip. I've got a million tips, but I'll stop there for the sake of time.
Yeah, because I find packaging is the worst. Packaging is the worst. You use that's like the biggest waste I think for me is packaging, because anything that you buy comes in packages. So so that is hard. Like that is, but also if you go out to eat and you bring home styrofoam containers, like that is, so I feel like the more like.
But you can take Tupperware with you. I know
You
that sounds
can.
bad, but this is what I do. I keep Tupperware in my purse.
Brilliant idea.
And then I throw it in my Tupperware and take it home.
Exactly. That is an
I
excellent
sound
idea.
like such an old lady right
No, it's a great idea.
Sorry.
I like that.
No, not at all.
Lou's rolling his eyes.
No,
at
I'm
me.
not rolling. I'm like, geez, I'm terrible is what I'm thinking. Like
Water bottles.
rolling.
Like water bottles drive me
water
up
bottles.
the
It
wall.
takes like 4 water bottles worth of energy to make 1 water bottle. And the more water you drink from water bottles, that's why 94% of us have toxic plastic in our urine, is in part because we're drinking from so much water bottles because all these microplastics. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the whole that.
Right. And so we get these individual water bottles, we down them and then we throw them away, down them, throw away. It's like, oh my goodness, waste of money, number one, because water comes into our house in America at very low rates. So we get it almost not free, but at very low rates compared to
It's
the
the
rest of the world.
cleanest water in the world.
Cleanest water in the
basically.
world. So you can use Brita filters. You can just drink from the tap. There's other things that you can do. You can get a filtration system, but the water bottle thing drives me up the wall because it is so much waste, so much added plastic that is just unnecessary. Sorry, Lou. I feel like we've
Sorry.
No.
We're
This
making
is, no,
And we were.
You've heard it here, folks. Like this is.
Yeah.
I need to do this more because I'm not.
Well, and Xandra was worried about her soapbox, and then it was Alicia that really, boy.
Alicia has her own garden.
out.
She can feed her entire neighborhood with the things she grows.
But it helps. So now I don't have to pay for packaging for tomato plants because I
Right.
grow tomatoes. I don't pay for packaging for peppers. So all this reduces my waste. When I grow things, I have less packaging. Packaging for basil, I grow that. Packaging for kale, packaging for spinach. Like I have those things.
Yeah.
So all of it's like the more you grow, the less waste you end up reducing anyways. I hadn't thought about your reduce, reuse, recycle being like the order mattering.
Yeah.
But that makes sense.
Fun fact for the viewers: Alicia came into work like a few weeks ago, just stressed out.
Oh, okay.
So stressed. And we're like, oh, what's going on? She was so worried about whether her irrigation system was going to work because she was going on a trip for like 2 weeks and she didn't want her plants to die. And I'm like, wow, I need priorities changed in my life because I've never thought about that one.
Well, the end of that story is the irrigation worked, and then we lost power the first day that I left, or the night that I left, and so then the irrigation system shut off. So then I was stressed. 4 more days I was gone, and there was no.
Did they survive your little
They
baby
did, because
plants?
apparently it was all of a sudden 2-3 days later it turned back on, and we also had rain. But it is very stressful for me actually. Who's going to care for my plants when I'm gone? Yes,
Jesus.
Jesus will. Jesus will care for them.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Well, we learned a lot. So much. This was both on topic and off the rails at the same time, and I loved every minute of it. So thank you guys for that.
Yes, and bottom line is we care for things God cares for.
Yeah. Well, and this is the work He gave us to do with Him.
Yes.
Subduing the earth doesn't mean use it for whatever you can and destroy it, but make friends with it and help it to create fruitfulness for the world. Like use this to love people in some way. That's it's as simple as that, I think. Yeah. But well, thank you. We've gone a little over, but I think it was worth it. and I hope I hope people will take some of those principles into effect, because that is they're really simple. Once you get used to it, there's simple fixes to make that can have a big impact and can influence others. So, and we're just trying to love what God gave us, and we should be doing that with everything. So, thank you all. If you have any, what am I doing?
Questions?
No,
Comments?
hold on.
Likes, comments.
That's not even what I was gonna do.
Subscribe.
Yeah. Well, we hope that you enjoy this. We hope you learned something from it and you're inspired to make changes and care for the environment the way God cares for the environment. If you would like to have your question answered on the podcast, you can email us at wherewebegin@lightengroup.org. And please like, subscribe, share, and rate. That helps us get the word out. Thanks, and we will see you next week.